kind of talk over. Yeah, no, I saw that. Well, I guess I'll call this meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Thursday, March 8th, 6 p.m. And we do not have any minutes to approve. So therefore, we would go straight to review and discussion of the FY19 general government budget. Yeah, so if we wanted to just talk briefly, if we got a minute, about anything in particular that we want to have him cover with regard to sort of broad overview. I say him, I mean the town manager. I believe in the past we've kind of just started and gone through sort of department by department, but I think it's also useful to have some kind of plan in mind for where we're trying to get to and so forth. So.
I'd like to echo a sort of a question or comment made by Mr. Linder last time, or several meetings ago, with reference to the idea that we consider the budget for 19 in comparison to the actuals for 18, because in the case of the school, there's some concern about the accuracy or the soundness of the numbers. Now, would that be true on the town side?
I think so. I have heard, and I honestly don't know which year we are always referring to.
Sorry, Jay.
No problem. About surplus on the town side. So that to me raises some of those type questions about budget versus actual. Is that any kind of an accurate number? Is there any kind of working, and I'm kind of looking down to the other end of the table, whichever one of you would want to answer, with regard to a surplus for FY18 on the town side?
Right. I mean, right now. Wish we could just talk. Right now, our projections are good in some of the trouble areas that we've had before, like transfer station, but that's its own fund, so that's a little irrelevant this year. We have a mechanism in place where anything that is, no lines can be overspent without written permission or without finding the funds from another portion within that department. So that's our cost control on the expenditure side. All our revenues are coming in pretty well again from a tax standpoint. State aid's on pace, and some of the minor revenue sources are just a little slow, but it's also some seasonality to that. And the big items like police overtime or DPW overtime, those are a little high right now, but we feel that that is offset by some other expenditures that haven't really been brought out. So outside of, unless Barbara has some input too, outside of I think a typical where we should be at this point in time of the year, I feel like we're running actually pretty close or pretty good. I'm not foreseeing as of right now the same level of surplus that we had last year, but we also had a very good tax collection effort versus a poor budgetary planning side of the equation.
I would agree.
So I don't know where I'm coming with a million numbers. So FY17 ended up somewhat, I haven't, well, the audit hasn't come out yet, but where did we end up on the?
Of the it was a $1.4 million surplus. Of that, $1 million was in tax collection.
But FY18, we're looking, not necessarily forecasting any kind of a surplus.
Not like that. I think as long as we control spending, and we get the budgeted tax collection, we would always be looking at even a very minor surplus, because that would just mean that you did your revenue side, but you actually did better on your expenditure side.
Okay. So I know you started to say something with regard to kind of just a general sense.
Well, yeah, after the excellent presentation that we went through on Tuesday, a lot of questions came up of my own. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm still at the thought process, and I believe we can easily get there, but we have to agree on a lot of things as a board. But I believe that the budget should be limited to a 2% increase, which would then potentially, based on the calculations that the town manager gave through his presentation, would give a tax rate increase about a 1.5% increase there. Now, going along with the thought process of, in my calculations, I believe there's $1 million that the school can be reduced, $1 million that the town can be reduced. Both of which, I don't believe there should be any new positions. Except, I shouldn't say that. There was a logistical issue that I had to laugh at, and because I'm surprised this wasn't taken care of years ago, that I do believe that you should have a full-time custodian at night and not necessarily during the day, but I think you need one then too. So that would be the position that I would look at to say, yes, we need a full-time custodian at night. There's too many meetings going on. This building should have an employee attendance in it. So that I had no issue with that. But also looking at the revenue, the surplus, if you will, the $1 million is coming from money that will not continue to come. It's from unpaid taxes, if you will, a great collection, great effort by the collection department to get past due taxes paid. So you're going to see where that doesn't happen anymore because they're not outstanding. The question of that then says, if there are certain things, certainly in the infrastructure, that need to be dealt with, and those were seen in the capital budget, can that money be used as a transfer in with council approval to offset specifically capital items, one-time purchase capital items? I wouldn't be a fan of using it on restricted items because restricted items are annually budgeted, but capital items would be able to be, we talked about that and how you've used that in the past in your previous community that you've served on a board. So that's where we might be able to buy down, if you will, this budget with some of those revenues that were explained by the town manager in his presentation. So that's why I believe there's definitely changes that can be made to benefit the taxpayer in this budget. I would like to know, and maybe it's too early yet until we start to get into the budget, if anybody else had any comments off of the town manager's presentation.
I guess the only question I have, or the initial question, is as we go through it, focus on on healthcare, because there was an issue, I guess, and continues to be an issue on the school side, and I'm curious as to whether or not it is an issue for the town. If not, how has the town been able to dodge a bullet that nonetheless impacted the school? And I also have just a structural question. is the town and the school on the same, are they members of the same cooperative, or is the town handled differently than the school is with regard to health care?
Yeah. Same cooperative, different fund.
So you have your own fund, and the school has its own fund?
Yes, and so the quick answer is the last couple of years, the town has budgeted the appropriate increases in what we're being told by our consortium administrator of how they feel the next year based on your experience in the prior year and based on trends in healthcare, what we should budget. And so we've done that. I'm not going to speak to the school side. I'll let the school side speak to that. We had, and I have the figures, but we had a issue last year where we were having some really high claims due to one or two individuals' situation. They were using a significant amount of money of our insurance to cover prescription drugs. And so we were keeping a close eye on that one because we were falling below our 25% where we want to be. Well, that corrected itself, not in a negative way, the person's still here and everything, but the situation corrected itself, and we are now back to exactly where we want to be. Our fund right now stands at $1.1 million, and we want to be at, and I have this right here. So our total costs are right around where our consortium administrator is advising us to be, and I'm bringing to the council shortly a health fund reserve policy, or health reserve fund balance policy, and that tells us that we need to be at 25% of successive year insurance costs, and we're there. And so to give you some example is through the end of June of 17, we were at $988,000 of our fund balance. And of June 30, 2018, which is, it's cumulative through that, so we've only done the seven months of that, we are already at $1.13 million. So our fund is improving. We had always been around that 20 to 25%, so we've been pretty fortunate, and I think that's why several years ago, and Chairman Goodman and Vice Chairman Stevenson know this because we talked about it a couple years ago, is we made the unfortunate decision to use health fund balance to balance the general fund budget, which is embarrassing in my opinion, and I'm sorry I'm being a little rough on that one, because we had such a healthy fund that we were able to do that. I'm not saying it was the right practice, but we were able to, and we did. And so I am very confident, the finance director and the HR director are very confident that we have a very, very well-funded health plan, or health fund at this point. And I have that documentation in case the board wants it.
And the school doesn't. Would be the other side of that.
See if I can do this right.
Just don't touch the button.
I didn't. Did it work? It worked. I thank you for the presentation last night. It really was very informative for me. I'm still the newbie, just so you know. So, you know, I have those newbie. I know you are too. But there's three areas that I want to make sure we address in this. You know, do we try and keep the taxes at a certain level, or do we look at how to fund the budget in line with what the requests have been? There's some balance there, but the three issues for me, health insurance, I think we've talked enough about. It's an extraordinary percentage increase that really, you know, all things being equal, if that happened in a budget, you either say you're going to keep the revenues the same and just eat it someplace else, or you're going to acknowledge the fact that you've got an extraordinary expense that you have to account for with your revenues. So that's what it boils down to for me. The other is the finance department, you know, the recreation of the finance department separately in both the schools and the town obviously incurs more cost. And again, that's something that we either decide that we're going to, penalize other parts of the budget to compensate for that, or we're going to look at that is an increased cost. And I agree with you, that's something that should have been more known when that was actually voted on, that was the impact, one of the impacts anyway, of making that change. The third is the capital plan. We look at the capital plan on a yearly basis here, which is what a lot of communities do, but really what we don't have a really good feel for, since the capital plan has only been funded to what I consider to even be a minimal level the past couple of years, there's a wave of projects that are just sitting there that just have not been able to be even looked at because there was no funding for them. And I think that's something that, as a finance board, we might be able to have some conversations about, and I'm sure it's something that, the town side will be looking at, is how do we make sure that that plan doesn't become an afterthought, which is what happens in a lot of communities, and it really is something we should be planning for. So I'm not saying I disagree necessarily with the idea of discussing whether to, reduce the amount of revenues in this plan, but I think there's three significant pieces that really need to be addressed, to determine what we do.
I'd just like to say that I totally agree with that, and with particular reference to on the finance side. At some point, I'd very much like to hear, I think we'd all like to hear from the interim finance director, what her view is about what it would cost to set this finance department, or the two departments, or whatever we want to do, up properly, so that this town gets proper support from on the financial side. On the second point, my second point, just as a footnote, is I see in the cover note from the Planning Commission that the Planning Commission believes there ought to be some plan, which I take it from what you say, and I agree, it doesn't seem to be a capital plan. It doesn't seem to be a long-range plan for capital replacement or anything, and I agree, that's something we need to deal with.
Yeah, thanks for the comments. If I may, before we get into the department by department, just address a couple of the high level comments made already. Is one, not that anybody was saying contrary to this, but I feel that the town has been doing a very good job of trying to keep health insurance costs as low as possible, as well as being responsible in the proposed budget, given in spite of the fact of the 12% health insurance cost increase. We all know that personnel is our biggest expense, and to properly and responsibly budget for all the services that the community is looking for, all while providing a workplace that is rewarding for employees to be at. One of the challenges is that we did change the health plan, and to that extent, and that not in this year. We did that 2 years ago, and we talked about that. But to that point, we're looking at last year health insurance costing over $2 million. We're looking at just a very slight increase of under $100,000 with regards to the cost of insurance. And so when you put that into a budget of over $90 million, it's the plan design that we chose to have more skin in the game, both from an employee standpoint with the high deductible health insurance plan, HSA, but also making sure that type of health insurance is good for the employees, because the money that they put into it will always roll over, and it's their account, so they would never lose that, and we did talk about that. With regards to the finance department, the way that the budget is currently situated is the cost of the reorganized finance department. So you're seeing what it costs. Anything on the school side is a discussion to have with the schools, but on the town side, what you see in the budget is the cost of the reorganized finance department.
Well, I mean, not to get into the weeds.
Yeah, microphone.
Not to get into the weeds right now, but my impression is, for instance, that the number, for instance, for what one would pay either 2 finance directors or 1 finance czar, whatever you want to call it, is not a good number. That one of the reasons we have not been able to hire such a person or persons is because we're not prepared to pay compensation that will attract somebody with the experience and expertise that we need.
Yep.
So, if the numbers in this budget reflect what it would actually cost to create a chief financial officer for this town who actually knew what she or he was doing, that's great. My impression is that that's not what these numbers provide. Am I wrong?
Yes. The numbers are fine. It is other reasons for various reasons of why we have not attracted the right candidate to that position yet. And we had that discussion with council. Council was willing to put in sign-on bonus as well as relocation reimbursement. And now with the recruitment that is currently out, we are seeing really good candidates. But when people like that, when people like that are applying, they're not applying to one place. And so what we're doing is making sure that we interview as we get good resumes versus waiting until some random date out in the future and hope that we can nab them. There has also been, and I know this is way in the weeds, I get that, and we're not there yet, so if you want to just tell me to stop, that's fine, is the process that we went through, I think now 4 or 5 recruitments that we've done for finance director, each one has actually improved upon itself. Each time we've gotten better and better and better candidates. And as everybody knows with the last one, but the one before that too, is the jobs were offered and then they ultimately ended up saying, no thank you. Or they chose something else in the meantime. So we have gotten better and better candidates. We have a good pool right now. We're going to start interviewing. But it is not the compensation, because if we go to that argument that we need to for certain positions we need to pay to the moon to get the best candidates, but then in other positions that are an equal within the organization, we're willing to scrape the bottom of or not even look at the bottom of the barrel. We lose that equity within the organization, and now you have a very bad structure within the organization of resentment because we are same level employees, let's say the directorate levels, and some people are making less than middle managers in other parts of the organization, and some people are making 10 to 20% more than the highest paid person in the organization. It's a failure it's an internal failure.
I think the only thing I would, I guess, clarify is that the entire finance department actually is now, the town does all the finance work. What will be on the school side is a business manager, whatever the title is, but that person's job will be basically to support the superintendent with regard to budgeting and do you see what I'm saying? So the nuts and bolts thing, the actual processing of everything is done on the town side, and the school pays a portion of that out of their budget. But and then there's a request for an assistant, whatever you want to call it, assistant business manager and a executive on the school side. But there's no accounts payable person there. There's no payroll. All that is on the town side. My understanding is that the only thing that's required by the charter is that there be a head school person, whether it's called the finance director or the business manager or whatever it is. with regard to use of the fund balance, the only thing I have to say to that is that I think it's real hard to build up a fund balance, which clearly on the town side has to be done. And adding 1.4 million to it helps a lot. And if we don't do that, that will be part of the need going forward, is to keep finding money to keep augmenting the fund balance, because that's the goal of it's the town council policy, is to continue adding to it until it hits a certain minimum, which it's not at, whereas the school is actually above its target, right now anyway.
Jay, can I comment on fund balance real quick, if that's okay? Just real quick, I'll make it as fast as I can. If we were, when the rating agencies look at the fund balances, as the board knows, I'm just sort of stating the obvious, but I'm prefacing. The rating agencies see the combined school fund balance and the town fund balance, and that's your fund balance for the purposes of the rating agencies. So the town's fund balance policy calls for a minimum of 15% of prior year expenditures. And the fund balance policy speaks to total fund balance. Rating agencies are very interested in your most liquid assets, so your unassigned fund balance. And a good gauge there is anything over 10%. Rating agencies want to see you get as high as you can while being responsible to the taxpayers too. So of with use of the prior year surplus, as I had talked about in the presentation, where if we prepay, because I too don't want to use fund balance, and I don't want to do that. You guys know how adamant I am about that in previous budget years, is we would have a, this is assuming the full budget, so not including if you prepay, you could take that stuff out of the proposed budget. You know, we would have basically $1.2 million over the 15% of total fund balance. And that's with the use of the prior year surplus to prepay. But that's also not factoring in the reduction of the budget by prepaying of the total fund balance. And then of the unassigned fund balance, I mean, we have done yeoman's work over the last couple of years where we were at a 6% undesignated fund balance, unassigned fund balance, sorry, it's an old term, to we would be around 13% unassigned fund balance. So we are at the level we want to be, can always do better, but we are at the level, the minimum level we want to be towards our fund balance policy for total fund balance, and we are within the range, can always be better again, but we are within the range of the rating agencies of where they want to see us for the unassigned fund balance, and that's with use of the prior year surplus and the remainder going into the fund balance.
Having said that, that's still I think it's very easy for us to get back into using fund balance. I also think, and I've kind of raised this at the last school committee meeting, is this idea that with the fact that the school district underfunded healthcare for 2 consecutive years and essentially ran a surplus of that amount, that is money that should have gone into the health fund, right? I mean, if they had made the recommended increases of 10% instead of 3%, that money would be sitting in the health fund balance right now and not in the school. But now what we have is a situation where we say, we have a $2 million hole in the health fund balance. And somehow we have to build that up by essentially running surpluses by charging more on the, I think that's that seems like something that shouldn't have happened. And it seems to me that that money should not be sitting in school fund balance, or we want to call it town school fund balance. It should be sitting in the health fund. So I'm interested in what other people think about that, but that's...
Mr. Chairman, on that note, is there, and maybe this question for Barbara, is there a way to reallocate that money to move it to the school insurance as opposed to keep it into the school fund balance, knowing that it's a town organization fund balance? And if there's a way to reallocate that, then by what percentage would we then be off from what Mr. Kennedy just explained, that we're within ranges and we have met policies? So if we were to reallocate to what the chairman just mentioned, we would be at a better equitable place with that account, but I just want to know how much we would be off or out of range or out of policy if we did that.
Can I start and give it to her, just some recommendation? Or do you, if not, you want to just hear from Barbara, that's fine too.
We'll share.
It is, while it is outside of my purview, I think a recommended practice would be not only should excess over policy fund balance, and both the school side has a fund balance policy and the town side has a fund balance policy, any excess in fund balance policy over minimum for the time being, over maximum, because I think the schools have a maximum, we don't, is that could be allocated into health fund until that meets a certain level. The other thing with the health fund is that is something that can increase itself over time with funding the health plan, improved health of the employees, so you would still be putting in the same amount, but less would be taken out. So the fund can correct itself like ours did on our side. Ours went down to, I think it was in the 800,000s, and now we're back up to the 1.1 millions. And that happened naturally. That happened all by itself. So, I think anything over the maximum of a fund balance policy can be decided as a policy from the school committee. And again, I'm not dictating anything to them. I don't want this to be taken that could go into, because you've met your obligations for a fully funded fund balance, and now you're using excess to go into the fund balance, or the health fund, sorry.
I'll just say, can we transfer prior year surplus into, and make a restriction such that it goes to the health fund? Yeah, we could. And again, we can rerun the numbers based on, what our current fund balance is, what our projected fund balance is for 18. We can do it. But this is clearly, at least in my opinion, it's been underfunded the last couple of years. The town budgeted 10%, the school only budgeted 3%. In my opinion, they should probably be the same, or, if not, they need to be looked at individually to see what claims experience is, what the projected working rate is, so that we know how much funding is going in there. And they really need to be analyzed every single year in order to make sure that we are putting the right amount in. Now, that fund balance for the health fund can go negative, but then you're sitting on a big liability, and ultimately that's the taxpayer's liability.
Right, and a challenge on the pools is just that, is when we do an analysis of our health insurance increases over time, it's easy to think that it is one glob, but in reality, to Barbara's point, you look at each of the represented pools within the pool. And so some of your employee groups will have a better claim experience in a prior year than another group. And so you might have one group that is actually keeping the cost down for the larger pool, or you might have a group that is driving up the cost for the rest of the group. And so the schools can really analyze each of their pools to determine where they want to go with that.
I just, seems like, though, this is just outside of a fund balance policy issue. It was a thing, and maybe I just think this is something that the school committee should take up as because for one thing, they have no surplus right now. Any negative experience is going to have to come out of what? That's my question to you. It would come out of, I guess, the school fund balance first. So I guess that defaults then as their health fund balance, which basically puts us right back where we said we wanted to get away from, was to have this buffer to account for good years and bad years, which of course you're going to have. So it would be good to get some kind of consensus on what's a plan for that going forward. All we can do is recommend. I guess the other thing I would say with regard to sort of broad ideas is apparently that there's an agenda item for the next town council meeting for them to discuss this idea of what's a target that we should be looking at. Whether they come back with one, we don't know, but it's on the agenda, so that would give guidance, right? Any other questions with regard to sort of general areas? Do we start to look at? I think you know, on the school side, to some extent on the town side, a lot of upheaval. We have a new superintendent. We're going to have a new town manager. We have an interim finance director who's running both sides. I think it's a good time to be cautious about bringing in new positions outside of ones that are, you know, I believe that on the school side there were 2 positions that are required on the basis of, you know, special ed rules. Other than that, I think that's, and on the town side, I think we need to be looking kind of the same way. Is this something that absolutely positively have to have, or it's something that we think might help? So do we start going through departments? Yes. Okay. Did you have any goal for
Just general government today, so that's going to be council manager, clerk, canvassers, court, legal, finance, tax, assessment, IT, HR, development services, yourselves, conservation commission, land trust, rec, OPEB, pension. That's it. Easy peasy.
so section 3?
So that's going to be, start with page 41, or, well, 42 if you want to get to the numbers. If, Mr. Chair, if you are okay with sort of doing this the way we've done it the last couple of years, I'll introduce the department, I'll highlight the big change, and then answer any questions that come in. Does that work still? So first we have town council, and the biggest change we see here is in the, there was an advertising line that was removed and moved to the town clerk line, town clerk budget, and so that's why you see a dramatic decrease, the 18% of the town clerk. Otherwise, the budget has remained roughly the same, minus some additions for food and drink. As that gets, as the hours go late, they get hungry and thirsty. So they stay well fed, and then the office supplies, which was the that's the replacement of the seats that was at the request of the council.
These seats?
So the current council has requested to change out these new chairs to newer chairs and increase their own budget by $4,100.
These chairs are 5 years new. Just for information, that's all.
I've never noticed any particular problem. And what did you say, that there's a $2,000 increase based on food? So more for food and more for chairs.
Can I ask one question on it? There's an anomaly, maybe it is, anomaly in 2017 actuals with regard to contractual services. That looks like it's an anomaly, and the steady state is more around single-digit thousands?
A lot of times what comes out of that line is if there are specific requests of the council for certain services. The big service that came out of the FY17 actual, I believe, was the consultant for the finance department reorg. And so because that was a council initiative, the contractual services came out of that line item.
And the $4,500 decrease.
Right, because now that is pretty much just covering the television and radio coverage for all their meetings. As that line usually is, that is the only item that should be coming up. But if council were to ever request a specific service that was not budgeted for, that's the line item that it would come out of. Like if a consultant came in.
How do you want to handle each budget as we go through? Do we want to have a motion that we tentatively accept or change?
I think what we've tried to do is, if there's nothing controversial, we just go ahead and approve it for now and move on. If there's any questions, we say, well, let's wait on that and come back to it.
And do you want to do that by motion? Okay, then I'll make a motion to accept the town council budget as presented.
Okay. Discussion? I'm not real thrilled with the idea of jumping right into the first budget item and saying we're gonna authorize new chairs. Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is I'd like to have sort of a.
That is something that the town council will have to explain to the constituents themselves. I don't disagree with your statement, but let them defend their own request.
Okay. I'm not gonna. At the end of the day, I agree. It will be their decision and theirs to defend. So, all right, all in favor then? Opposed? None. Motion carries. Next.
Okay, next up we have town manager. Town manager is up for 2 reasons and is offset by 1 reason. As is very obvious, we have put in for an assistant town manager position that is funded at a September 1st hire, so a 75%. That is $52,000 represents the salary of 75% of $80,000, because the hiring range would be 75 to 85. So we put that right in the middle. And then there is also an increase in professional development as we went from basically requested professional development the last 2 years to encouraged and mandated professional development for this coming year. So what that does is it represents every department head, because all department head professional development is in the town manager's budget, all staff professional development is in the individual department budgets. So $50,000 represents comprehensive training to their respective associations and organizations, as well as all their memberships to those organizations, for every department head and direct report of the town manager. So that's why that's that. And then you'll see an offsetting, slightly offsetting decrease in the contingency budget. For the new members of the Board of Finance, the contingency line in the town manager's budget is the money set aside for the performance review and increases for staff. Since we don't know what that's going to be because it's based on performance, that number is set aside. Why it is the number that it is because that includes non-union and there is one union that hasn't been negotiated yet. We expect that union to be negotiated potentially before the end of this fiscal year. And so there may be, I don't know if it's going to happen before the budget is approved, but the money that was set aside in the FY19 contingency line may be additional if that union's contract gets negotiated this fiscal year, because that would come out of this fiscal year's contingency line. So that is why that is in there. And the reason why that detail remains fairly vague is for two reasons. One is because we don't know what we estimate what an average performance increase is going to be across the board for non-union. So that includes a preset range of what the merit increases would be based on the score that the employee gets in their performance review. So that's non-union. And with regards to the union side, we estimate a first year, because that's all it would be, unless there's retro with that too, a first year's payment towards increase, but we don't want to tip our hat on what we've funded that at, because now that diminishes our ability to negotiate that first year increase in the contract.
On this budget, I would like to make a motion that we remove the new assistant town manager position and all associated health costs and benefits that go along with that position.
Is there a second?
Well, actually, I'd like to talk about a few other items before we get there, if that's okay.
By all means.
Well, if there's a motion on the board, so.
Asking if anyone wants to second that motion. There's no second, so therefore it dies, right? Okay, go ahead.
Microphone, Steve.
If we, on professional development, if you were to have gone back and in 2018, would you have, if you grab back the professional development that was incurred in each one of those departments, would it have been $50,000?
No, and here's why. Because for FY17 and for FY18, those budgets represented what I was. I threw out the email. Is there any professional development that you are interested in the next fiscal year? Whatever I get back, add that up. And I would edit it if people were going to say, for equity across the board, I would limit one conference per department head, so that one department head's not going to 3 conferences and another one's not going to any. I wouldn't do that. So that's where I was limiting it to. So those numbers reflected the requests I received. This year it's different because I mandated professional development on all department heads, because not all department heads were participating in that. So now everybody is either going to their regional or annual conference for their association. But it also includes, because what was different between last year and this year is their departments would include their fees and memberships. And so to make it as one number as possible, we included all that as well. There's also in this budget a amount towards the second year of a leadership training that some staff has been going to. So this would be a second cohort of that for another group of staff to go to this really comprehensive leadership training. So it's more comprehensive this year than the last 2 years. Did that answer your question, Steve?
To some extent.
Sorry.
And then on this contingency, I was kind I'm a little lost in the explanation.
Okay.
Is there a prospect for some of 2019 contingency to actually be expensed or experienced in 2018?
No, it's the cost and expense could potentially occur in 18, FY 18, this fiscal year, that would negate its need in 19. And so if a contract is not settled before June 30th of this year, then that money needs to be in the budget, in the contingency line for next year. If it is settled this year, which, and this is what's admittedly annoying for yourselves and the town council, is if that contract is signed this year, but after your process, then the money has been allocated into the 19-year contingency, knowing that it won't be used.
So you'll have a surplus.
Arguably. Or it could go towards year-end transfers to balance other lines.
So with regard to 2018 budget of 175, do you have any sense as what the actual is in 2018?
As of right, I should have my year-to-date book. John, you got it. As of right now, I believe that's only about 70,000.
So in theory, between the 2 years, there's a likelihood of some surplus, perhaps of an order of magnitude.
Say that one more time.
If your actual is running at $100,000 less than right now, that doesn't mean it's getting up there, but it's running at $100,000 less than your budget, in theory, then whatever might so unless there's a big catch-up for 2018 in terms of actual, and whatever may happen with regard to 19, in reality, there's probably some degree of surplus there between the 2 years in combination of an undetermined number.
Yes, between the 2 years, yes, absolutely. And the challenge is it's an unknown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, with topics in the budget, I'm going to have to ask you permission to speak of the assistant town manager, because it wasn't seconded for discussion purposes, and I don't understand how you are going to proceed with the board. If an item comes up, like Steve just brought up, is there going to be a motion on the item before discussion, or are we going to have discussion before we start taking up numbers? Because maybe I jumped the gun on that.
Typically, what we've done is kind of go over, like, clearly you have some concern about the assistant manager position, so do I.
Well, I brought it up for discussion.
Right, well, this is what we've done, in terms of, is we go through some things, people raise some concerns, if there's kind of consensus that that's something we think we don't want to put in, then we say, okay, well, let's consider approving the budget without that.
So you have your discussion first.
I mean, now, I'm happy to put each one on the table first as approve as is, and then have our discussion, whichever way we want to do it. I think it cuts through so that if we do want to actually make some reductions right now, we can just have a single motion once we have consensus on it. So do you have another preference?
Yes.
No, I'd just like to say, I don't know whether this is a response, but I am not prepared to make a decision on the assistant manager position. It seems to me that's part of a much larger picture, and I'm just not ready to say yay or nay on that now.
Well, it's not.
Don't touch it.
The town has shown its hand on this. I'm sure Mr. Goodman has seen this. We've had this position in the past. We've seen it come and go. We've seen it removed by the council. And then we just saw 42 charter questions that put in positions, but not this position. As we move forward, we're going to move forward with a different manager. With no disrespect to this one, but the other, we're going to be putting in a different person with potentially different philosophies on how to handle a situation. So it's been added and removed in previous years. It wasn't put in by the Charter Revision, and we're going to be going forward with a different manager. So I see at this point in time, there's no purpose for this position in this budget.
Anyone else? Opinion on that particular position?
The reason that I don't want to, as the first item, make a decision on a position is I would prefer to look at positions and then determine, where we stand. This is $100 million, for sake of argument, $100 million business. To say that you're only going to have one person, and I mean, having seen other towns and other organizations, and I'm not saying that Westerly has to do it the way other people have done it, but just looking at it as a $100 million operation, having someone who is the executive in command and then having a second in command is not unreasonable. Is Westerly at that point yet? That's a question the voters and others have to answer. But I think one of the responsibilities that I see is for us to be able to clarify these issues for people. Just like we just had the conversation about a finance department, that it's costing us more money. Well, if that was clear, and I don't understand how people would say that that was something that they wanted to move forward towards, where most communities are trying to be like a business. I don't agree with that completely for government entities, but there are some cases where it does make sense to try and coordinate and to consolidate operations. This one worked. It's not like it was failing, and then from what I understand.
And I agree with you, and I went back to look at all those questions, and there were no money, there were no dollars added, so the community doesn't know what this is costing them. That's the sad part.
And so one recommendation, which again, I'm just saying as an individual, not that I'm saying that we should do this, I think that whenever there are referendum questions that have a financial impact, the Finance Board ought to be at least, having some conversation. Just we're having it about the budget. I mean, it's not unreasonable. It's just advisory. I mean, all we're really doing, I shouldn't say all we're doing like it's minor. I mean, it's trying to really get a couple levels down in detail on these things and make the justification or not, as it is appropriate, from just our perspectives, being kind of, 5 people, from different corners of the town that are looking at it from different perspectives. So I don't, I look at that position and say for a $100 million business, having a second in command, I mean, to me, that, from my perspective, that is an easy one for me to say that is important to do. And especially knowing the level of detail that is managed by the town manager. There's everything from the strategy about a capital plan and how do we put together a 5-year plan and how do we work with department heads to, work as teams and make some of the DPW changes that I've heard, to the minutia of very specific detail. It's a broad range of stuff. And at some point you get to be a big enough organization that it is important to have somewhat of a separation to make sure that
I'm
all
not
those things get done.
disagreeing with your thought process. I'm disagreeing with the way the town handles personnel. The town handles personnel and has been proven by charter changes. When the town handles personnel of this magnitude, by management addition, it has been removed. So why are we going to line it up again? This is history in this town. Why are we going to line it up again for it to be removed? If it's necessary, and I'm not saying it's not, then let it be managed by the charter. And then it will become always necessary and then handled that way, like they just did with all those questions.
So
Okay,
safe
and I
to
just want to
say,
know how many newbie cards I get to play.
safe,
A lot? Really, I think this is great.
I think,
And so I don't
I wanna-
disagree with you. Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to, one of the goals as we go through is to identify department budgets that we do have agreement on. And so I think this is one that we can agree that we don't have agreement on at this point. Might be useful to know something about staffing for towns this size. I know I've a fair amount of experience on the school side looking at that, but not so much on the town side. I know are you referring to like the chief of staff that we had at one point? Was that kind of an assistant type position?
Kind of.
Anyway, that's, The other area that I've had some back and forth with is regard to this contingency fund as opposed to distributing it through the budget, which kind of has been my preference. But that's another piece we can come back to, I think, as we go through. So, anyone else want to cover any new ground on this, or?
It's not new ground, but I do have a couple of questions. And we can, I would just like information, and we can move forward after, but I just appreciate some clarity with regard to the town manager. Why is the September start date?
I use that as a way to, when I was cutting the budget, to bring down the overall value of this year's proposed budget.
Okay, so there's nothing particularly significant about September?
Correct. Nope.
And then with respect to the duties you anticipate that person performing, how is that because you just want assistance, or do you envision carving out your responsibilities and or the town manager's responsibilities versus the assistant town manager's responsibilities?
Yes, I see that role as an aid in the operational management of the town. Assistant town managers are valuable at various size towns. That's why it's difficult to look at populations and determine whether there's a necessity for certain staffing levels, because the organizational complexity might be different at different population levels. The other challenge is looking at anything to this magnitude in Rhode Island, you're going to get a 0. There are no assistant town managers in Rhode Island. So, understanding that that is also an area in which people use as a comparison, is going to be difficult to justify based on just simply looking in Rhode Island. That said, the expectations on the town manager are from soup to nuts, and the expectations from various stakeholder groups of the town manager are very different. The expectations of me from a town council are very different than the expectations of me from department heads, which is very different than the residents. And in order to do everything effectively and the best way possible, you can't do it all for everybody. So some group, or all groups evenly, are going to get a diminished capability of the town manager, or what their expectations are of the town manager. My vision for this position was going to be to aid in the operational management of the town, so that the town manager can focus on the strategic planning, the leadership development, being in the community, being a representative of the community, and doing everything they can to be as accountable to the town council as possible. Whereas the assistant town manager would have various reports that are currently town manager reports. That structure would flow very well with regards to the administrative part of staff versus the day-to-day operational parts of staff. And so that I would envision that position having several of the more day-to-day, face-to-face general government type administrative appointments, whereas the town manager would oversee the public works, public safety, and the more administrative roles within the town government. Westerly, even though it is a 23,000 population town, is a very complex organization with all of the different departments and expectations of those departments, but also the complexity of the finances that we have here and how we operate the various departments. Luckily, I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff, so I like that stuff, and it's easy for me to follow along with that. But knowing that it is as I stated before, these types of organizations are personnel-driven organizations. 13 direct reports is a large amount of direct reports. In order to do all the personnel stuff that goes along with working with my 13 direct reports, but also managing my 13 direct reports, as well as being as responsible as I can to the planning board, the economic development commission, the town council, the board of finance, and any of the other boards and committees who whether it's within their charter provision, within their code provision, or just their expectations that the town manager is involved, and making sure that I can be out into those community events and organizations that expect some level of participation from the town manager, and make sure that I'm being as responsive and as thorough to the town council as is professional. I'm not doing that right now. There needs to be another high-level administrator in this town to make sure that whether it's me or the next town manager is as successful as they possibly can be. And not to jump on any points, because I don't want to do that or make a habit of that, but as a $100 million organization, to have one person over all of that without any assistance other than relying, which I do heavily, because that's how I manage. I bring up my department heads so that they are leaders within the organization. There needs to be, in my opinion, there needs to be an additional administrative role to help manage those functions and expectations.
Mr. Chairman, could you lead me to the page in the budget, because I just can't seem to find it quickly enough, that adjusts or highlights all the separation of dollars to different accounts, similar to the one that I'm going to point is the town manager now, where it only shows $76,000 a year. Do we have that document in this book that allocates those salaries?
I don't have it in this. I don't have it in this book, but I do have it, and I can hand it out. We can make that available for you right now.
Oh, you mean I didn't understand.
The fund allocations for various administrative positions.
Where are the dollar amounts, so that the budget, the finance board understands that?
I believe it's the amounts that are in, I'm not sure what you
So the unit cost,
total is, or?
yeah, if you look at the unit cost on page 47, look in the detail lines, and then if you go to town manager, what we've done for you is that everybody's salary is 100% under unit cost, but it's the quantity that separates out the allocation. So you can see what my salary is, and then the quantity is the general fund allocation.
How am I going to see that in the other budget?
Correct. They're in every single budget.
I will see
126.
126 and then their allocation.
Correct.
Anyone else on this budget? Should we move along?
Okay.
Town clerk?
This budget, the town clerk's budget, reflects the addition of the advertising line, and that is the fifth line down. You can see the change there. And as I noted before, what's in you'll see in a lot of these departments' budgets is the focus on professional development this year. So all staff are required to have some level of professional development. And so while as I've said this before, focusing on percentages sometimes can be challenging, this budget shows an increase in professional development for the town clerk's office.
Make a motion to accept this budget as presented.
Discussion? I just am trying to understand I thought in the past we had all the positions with a zero increase and the contingency number, but I see a couple of them have increases on them.
So what that is showing is because the budget was adopted, just like we would do this year if it stays the same, is you adopt the budget at their current salary, and then when we're reflecting my proposed budget, that's reflecting the change based on their performance review. So that's the increase that they got in the last year, is what you're seeing. That's not an increase that I'm putting in there.
Well, it's the reflection of the distribution.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, that makes. Anyone else?
No, actually, I do have a question. So you're saying, just taking town clerk with a 2% increase, are you saying that that is the salary to be paid to the town clerk for fiscal year 19?
All the salaries that you see throughout the budget under FY19, 2019 manager are their current actual salaries. It's reflecting the difference between what was adopted and then what happened through the performance review process.
Because between 17 and 18, there was no adjustment because it was all in that contingency fund. So now that we know what each was given, that's what they'll be paid.
You're basically seeing the allocation out of the contingency line into those budgets, into those.
So FY19 is really the FY18 actual salary.
Correct. That's one way of looking at it, yes.
So there's a potential for an increase then?
Correct, because of if they have a successful performance review, because everything is based on performance instead of just COLA.
And that will be the reallocation out of the contingency?
Correct, of the FY19.
We'll see next year.
Correct.
But it never goes beyond the contingency.
It's a little confusing. Just said that.
Got a motion in a second.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next up is Board of Canvassers, and this is the, as everybody remembered from the presentation, you sort of have that every other year up and then every other year down because it reflects elections. And this year is just that. This is reflecting the little bit of increase in overtime to cover for elections, as well as the costs for the professional services that go along with the elections.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, why don't, instead of floating this every 2 years up and down, why don't we have a restricted account for this, so then it's a constant budget? It should never be, it doesn't need to be up and down. It can be a steady budget as long as we budget it right now for the future.
We could do that. And an example of that is the professional licensing fees that we have for the sanitation, for the transfer station, where we just put that in restricted because it's an every other year cost. And so we just put it in there, a little, like half of it each year, and then it just stays even.
So,
How would we want to visit that in the future of suggesting a restricted fund, or we would just want to continue the way it is? Maybe when we get to restricted accounts, discuss it then?
yeah, the problem, I think, with recommendations that are made here is they frequently go away to die. And I'm not saying that there's just a lot of priorities out there. And so I think if it's something that we think makes sense, we'd propose it by adding a restricted line item for that amount.
Well, that's what
Put it in our recommended budget and say, this is what we want
that's
to
what I
do.
would opt to do here, and then in next year, keep it at a level like this, only in the restricted side.
Yeah, you just put 10,000 a year into that and just so if we were to do that, we can just propose to knock some amount out of this, or just come back to it with.
I think between now and your decision time, I can figure out what those costs should be on an annual basis so that we fund the restricted, like you were saying, so that always stays the same, so that this budget can always remain roughly the same too. I can come back with those figures for you and recommend something for restricted.
Why don't we just, if there's no other concerns, we'll just approve this as is with the discussion that we just had, that we'll talk about moving that line item out.
I'll make that motion to approve it as is with discussion in the future for a restricted line.
Discussion? All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next up is probate court, and this budget reflects the employee benefit cost as well as the recommended salary increase, the annual salary increase that the town council had brought up last year.
I'll make a motion to accept this budget as presented.
Discussion? All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion? If I don't hear otherwise, I'll say all in favor? Motion carries.
Next up on page 72 is the municipal court. This budget reflects the employee cost changes as well as the a salary increase for the judge. I'll have to and will defer to the town council on whether or not that difference between the probate and municipal court increase is on purpose or accidental. Because one is 2%, one's 2.5%. So I don't believe council meant to have non-parity there, so I'll look into that.
Questions?
I do, just a point of clarity. Is the municipal court clerk an employee?
Correct.
Got no health insurance?
The health insurance is waived. Or, actually, this is a situation where you have two employees who are spouses working for the town, so they are under one of the employees' health insurance. No. Okay.
It's a cost saving.
I just have a question. Why are there no actuals for FY17 for the municipal court clerk? Is that correct, or?
Yes, if the board recalls, we eliminated the municipal court clerk position from municipal court and made that a consolidated position within the town clerk's office. It was then deemed appropriate because 75%, or I believe it's 85% of that position's role is municipal court. So put the allocation of that role, like we do for the other departments, in this budget, which you'll see is 85%, and the other 15% remains in the town clerk's budget because that person performs administrative duties for the town clerk's office as well.
So it would have been in that budget for that year?
Correct, in 2017.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to accept this budget as presented with the caveat that the town manager is going to look into the percent increase for the equity of judges.
Yep.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Now we're moving. Next up is legal, and there are no changes.
Yep.
I follow this. This understandably perpetuates the pattern where the town hires an employee who are actually a law firm, right?
Correct.
And we discussed last year, am I right, that there is an argument for just simply retaining or not employing a lawyer?
Correct.
And why have we not done that? I mean, while I still believe that it is a justified position, because I brought that forward 2 years ago, I still believe it's a justified position as the expectations of the solicitor and assistant solicitor vary
and right now it's calming down. The town has been well-served when expectations are lowered on those positions. I still believe, though, that this town will be well-served by a staff attorney who manages all contracts, reviews all bids, is heavily involved in insurance, man's or woman's, I'll just say persons, the various boards and commissions like land use for those as is stipulated now, and is administratively supervised by the town manager, but their work is reviewed and approved by the town solicitor, who is appointed by the town council. So the assistant solicitor would be hired by the town manager with obviously the appropriate background, the job description, and everything that would be required by that. This town has, in my opinion and in my experience, it's always better to have things done and reviewed prior to publication and going out to avoid litigation and such costs. And so the personnel cost on the front end more than justifies the potential legal expense on the back end if things weren't done appropriately or accurately.
And is it correct, or as you describe this position here, the various boards have counsel, right?
They are either the solicitor and or assistant solicitor who's under zoning and planning, or who does zoning and planning.
So as an example, the only one I'm at all familiar with is the zoning board.
Mm-hmm.
It has a solicitor, but it's the already incumbent town solicitor.
Correct. For planning and zoning, that's the assistant solicitor. Pretty much just does planning and zoning. That's their sole responsibility. All other matters go to the law firm of our solicitor.
And am I right that at some point in the relatively recent past, the existing town solicitor said that either resigned or because the workload was in fact excessive?
Yes.
I don't believe he resigned. I think I do recall.
It was amicable. It was
number of hours being well above what he had
right.
anticipated.
I mean, it was amicable, and it was just so that the position could focus on all clients. Yes.
I believe at the time I think we even recommended that position with the idea that it would reduce dependence
That's right.
on outside legal
That's right.
help. But the council made its determination on that. Does anyone else wish to speak to questions? There's no real, actually, there was literally no change.
I'll make a motion to accept this budget as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Just to put on the list for us perhaps to consider, if we agree, pushing forward to the council again, the idea that it would be a good idea to have a staff attorney.
We
Not
could,
as part of this resolution, but just to put on possibly put on the to-do list.
And if the Board of Finance wishes to do that, I believe we budgeted $90,000 salary for a hiring range of probably 85 to 95, and then times that by 0.13 for benefits. So I think it's somewhere around the 120 range in total. And I'm just saying that for informational purposes, not for any dissuasion.
Where does the value for all your assistant solicitors come from?
I don't understand the question.
You pay all your assistant solicitors, correct?
Correct.
Do you pay them out of the town solicitor line or professional services line?
They are paid out of the part-time line.
So all of the assistant town solicitors total the $76,217.
Correct.
So if the council was to move forward with a consideration that Mr. Stevenson just discussed, they would be adding approximately $50,000 to $60,000 to that number. But, and I would say but, removing then all those assistant solicitors, because then that would be the full-time solicitor's job.
Possibly, and the only reason why I say that is because when you need that expert attorney like we do on some occasions, you hire that, like right now, you know, we have an assistant, like if you look in your detail line, we have an assistant prosecutor when we need to do that because our solicitor might not have the expertise to litigate that type of matter. So we would have the solicitor still, we would have the assistant town attorney, and then we would most likely still have to budget a little bit for those special cases where we need to hire an additional attorney.
But that is, am I correct? With
Yes.
your explanation, that would come out of those professional services?
Yes.
though? Okay, so I wasn't looking to touch that number at
Yep.
all. I was just looking what we would have to do to that 76 if we move forward with that.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think that's something we can consider, but for now, we'll just approve this as is. If there's no objection, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Next up, next up is finance. And we are showing here the full cost. So there's a couple changes, and this is showing the full cost of the department budget. It's showing you the allocations, so pay attention to the unit cost, I meant the quantity cost within your detail, so that you can see how the positions are allocated. It also reflects the elimination of the tax collector department from the finance department, which is budgetarily only. It's just to make the tax collection department more transparent with its costs. And it also increases the auditor's fee because we know that we will be going out for bid again for an auditor, and we wanted to more accurately account for that based on the last year's bids that we received, so that we have the ability to make a selection.
Okay, with that statement of the removal of the tax collector department, you're showing it in fiscal year 19, so in essence, this budget increased from 488, 845, which had the collector in it? Or is it the 878 that had the collector in it in the actuals of fiscal year 2017? I just want to...
Well, that also reflects this movement of this
Right.
left.
Really, we have to add the 193, I think.
So to get apples to apples, we have to, the budget of 488, we're going 585 plus 193 to look at apples to apples.
Correct. And so I'd just like to point out that...
Oh, I'm not saying that that's wrong.
No.
I want to get a clarification on that.
Yep, and I didn't take it that way, Ken. I'm just saying, I just want to point out for everybody that this year's budget, as is obvious, includes the system administrator, senior accountant, and the reflected changes in employee costs, and as well as the difference in finance director pay and the auditor's fee. All of that accounts for some increase, as you can see.
So these are brand-new positions this year?
The brand-new positions, as approved by council, are the systems administrator, the senior accountant, the finance assistant.
And I'm sorry, these were previously approved by town council?
Yes, all the positions
Okay.
in the budget are approved by council in the finance department.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's great.
Sorry.
So there's no offset to any other place?
Correct. Except if you take into account allocations from school department.
What's the aggregate allocation from school department? What's the impact?
So what I mean is, if you look at last year's budget to this year's budget, last year's budget showed the financial cooperation between the two entities. Now we have separate budgets, and we are bringing to the council the affiliation agreement, the shared service agreement that will specifically define the allocation that the school department will give to the town for those services like payroll and accounting and grant and purchasing and accounts payable. Yeah.
So the school budget should actually go down as a consequence. Well, no, actually it doesn't go down. It's just reallocated.
Well,
The school budget should reflect the allocation to the town per the shared service agreement.
It's almost like professional services.
Correct.
I just have two, I guess, requests. I'd very much like to see an organizational chart
Okay.
of the combined, maybe that's not the right word, the total school and town finance departments. And I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I would like, unless it's already happened, I'd like to be comfortable that the numbers we're looking at here are a realistic expression of the expenses we think to fund those positions, and that those positions will get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what's been happening for years around here now is the job has not been getting done.
I can forward to the board as soon as tonight or tomorrow the memo outlining that I provided to the council outlining the organizational change, the deconsolidation, all the positions, the cost of such transition, as well as the org chart, because all of that is already available and I could email it out to you guys quickly.
would it be fair to say that if you take the finance director out, everybody else is doing essentially the same job that they were doing before?
You have to ask that a different way for me.
Well,
Okay, we previously had the finance team, if you will, located over in the school district and a split of payment. But you had a purchasing agent, a payroll coordinator, accounts payable clerk, accounts receivable coordinator, and accountant. Is anyone new here? I'm not understanding what you say when you say there's new positions approved by the council for, they've already been approved and are working here. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, does that have anything to do with consolidation or deconsolidation? It doesn't seem like it does. It seems like the job that would need to be done, we haven't deconsolidated the finance department, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, we have deconsolidated the finance department, but my role right now is split between the two organizations. But what we did, and what, I think the town council looked at the Novak report. They also looked at the recommendations that I made when I first came on board, given what I was finding about the amount of work that had not been done because the finance department was not sufficiently staffed in prior
That's
years.
what I guess I'm not trying to get into a big thing about consolidate versus deconsolidate, but it's, even if we hadn't made the move that we did, we would have had to add positions based on your recommendation. That's what I'm,
Yes.
okay. But those weren't in the budget because, at that time, we didn't have that information. So is it safe to say we will be over budget for 18? This budget, the 488, it would seem.
Yes, because the council approved a use of fund balance to cover the costs of implementing the organizational restructure that was recommended. And that's inclusive of people, training, and equipment. And that will be in that memo that I send out, the exact costs of all of that.
But what I'm trying to get is just on this department basis, we're not adding anything that isn't already here, right?
Correct.
And we are taking out the tax collector to move to a different department.
Correct.
Is there any other $10,000 increase in postage?
That's because we consolidated all the postage into one account versus spread out over 2 accounts, I believe. That's a transfer.
I'll make a motion to approve this budget as presented.
Discussion? Favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Next up is tax collection. And what this does is reflects the separation out of the finance department, and also it reflects the taking out of the postage line and putting that in the finance department. And I don't believe there are any other adjustments.
I'll make a motion to accept this budget as presented.
Discussion? All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
So it's next in the budget in terms of page 98, but do you want to save the discussion on pension and OPEB until we're done with the departments, or do you want to put it right in the middle of our discussion? Because we could just go to the next department if you want, and then come.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so next up on page 102 is the assessor's office. It's just the numbering of the accounts. I'd like to point out to the Board of Finance that if you go down about 8 lines to health insurance, that 78,000, unless it's reflected, does that say 78,000 in your book? That should be decreased by $12,000, because that is an error. So that will be about $66,000. Other than that, as spoke about in the presentation, the reason for one of the increases in the assessor's budget is because of the now appropriate classification of the employees from office workers to field workers, which changes their costs for workers' comp. And so there was a slight increase in that budget. And this also takes into account year 2 of replacing the office equipment to year 2 of 2 to replace the office equipment. No. Once it is replaced this year, or if it is replaced this coming year, that'll be the office equipment replacement for a while.
So is that a standard practice? I mean, I know you're doing the car, vehicles now.
Well, arguably, where we should go, to your point, and to I know several of the board members have stated things to this fact, is that if we wanted to be strategic with this, we would understand where we are with the age and usability and safety of our desks and cubicles, et cetera. Determining what that typical replacement time frame would be. And as we do with our computers, saying, we're going to commit ourselves to this many desk or office equipment replacements per year, which costs X number of dollars, and now that's a restricted line or a capital line for equipment. So we're not there yet, but that's where we should be going with that.
With the adjustment the town manager explained to us on the health insurance line, the reduction of $12,000, that adjusts the increase to approximately 3.16%. With that said, I'd like to make a motion to accept this budget as presented with the adjustment from the town manager.
Discussion?
Is that less than the increase you're getting? Is that what you're...
I'm still trying to kind of figure out the numbers. If we look at that, it was initially a $24,000 increase. Are you saying the bottom line is correct?
The bottom line is no. The bottom line also needs to be adjusted by $12,000.
I see a $24,000 increase there roughly before the adjustment and a $10,000 increase in contractual services. Everything else looks pretty much flat. So that would only be 14, but the increase is 23. Is there $9,000 in other?
I think if you add up the salary increases and the health insurance, and then I'm sorry, not the health insurance.
Yes, it must add up to about $9,000 worth of increases. Okay, so we're approving it as adjusted, so it's 347 something roughly.
Correct.
All's in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next up is IT, and the big change here, which is reflective of the budget really, is now it does include some new software, but the now totally allocated all town hardware, software, contractual services is in that that line item, and that's why you're seeing the increase. If you go to contractual services, the IT director has broken out what the different chunks of those contractual services are: communications, consulting, hardware, and security. There is a further breakdown, if the Board of Finance is interested in that, of what each thing is within those. So there's detail and then there's detail. If the Board of Finance is interested in that, I can provide that as well.
And the police are not in here, or they are?
Since the police has a technology budget, it is under that budget.
I'll make a motion to accept this budget as presented.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The next budget is human resources. What we are seeing here is a couple things. I'd like to point out, just so that there's transparency, with regards to the HR director's salary, that is an adjustment that was approved by town council when payroll services were then brought in under HR, because they used to be under finance. So that's what that reflection is. That was not the performance increase. I wouldn't say that would be good. And then the other thing too that I really want to point out to the board is a lot of the professional development, staff development, employee recognition, programs, wellness programs, all of that is under the HR budget. You will see two two initiatives this year, one of which was requested by council in last year's budget, but not funded last year. It was for this year's budget, was the implementation of a tuition reimbursement program. And you'll see that is about halfway down at 502-282 for $10,000. And the detail in the budget explains about what that's going to get. Obviously, anyone who knows what college costs are knows that $10,000 isn't for anyone to go all the way through college right now. But what it is it's a Kickstarter for whoever is going to, I believe it's a community college, the CCRI, the what? Right, for CCRI, for a certain number of courses which have to be related to their current profession. And so that's a new initiative that we're doing for workforce development. You'll also see an increase in employee recognition because the recognition program has expanded greatly. And that is everything from the employee picnic to the chamber dollars that are provided for the above and beyond awards that we get, as well as recognition for a new program that we're doing for safety recognition and team recognition should any of the teams be nominated by their peers for recognition within the town. So while I'm talking a lot about one line item or two line items, one of which is going up just slightly, the other one's brand new. I just wanted the Board of Finance to recognize that this is all part of the HR budget, includes all programs and services for wellness, recognition, and development for employees.
With that said, Mr. Chairman, that is one of the reasons why I applaud this type of budgeting to take the current employees, give them the professional development money that they so deserve, and then look at these other initiatives for additional education, in-house training, and the employee recognition, tuition reimbursement. But I think that's the track that the town should stay on right now, and not new employees.
So in-house training would also be a proposal? That's what it sounds like. And you were did you maybe talked about
the in-house? Yeah, I mean,
you don't. I don't need to.
Okay.
I read about it in here. I was just asking that would be new, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any basis for that number?
Yes.
I know it sounded like it was basically so that in staff can learn how to train others, basically, right? Just a ballpark number.
Would you like to?
It doesn't have to be extensive. Just
Okay. Brief.
no, I know.
So briefly, what this training is, the number one request from all staff is Excel training. And so this is the cost to work with the higher education organization down the street to rent their room and get a trainer to train all of our staff versus sending individual staff to training. So that's what that is.
Exactly what I was.
Have we ever offered tuition reimbursement on an ad hoc basis?
It is offered to police, and it is budgeted in the police budget. Outside of that, since all I can speak to is since I've been here, and it has not been offered because it wasn't budgeted for.
So, any other questions with regard to this budget?
Steve, are you in favor of that design?
Yeah, I was just curious whether it was handled on an ad. I was just curious whether it was otherwise provided, but on an ad hoc basis where funds were just found based upon need. And so I think it's a good program. I was just curious whether it was handled differently.
Yeah, it's certainly very
Previously.
common, obviously, in organizations. I
Right.
don't know how common it is in municipal.
It's common in municipal, I mean, this is going to be a horrible statement. It's common in municipal organizations who do it. And what I mean by that is there's a there's a professional development mindset out there that believes in the development of their employees to the point where they're willing, and which is proven that we do that, but we've only done it on the police side. And so what we're doing is we're expanding this into the whole town.
And I will say, in many municipalities here in Rhode Island, it's always done on the police side. Contractual allowance, policeman bill of rights, all that, it's always done on the police side. This is good that it's being done on the town side. There is a belief of equity now, that it just doesn't belong to the police, that everybody, all the department heads or any staff member will be able to get that training. So I'd like to see that in that budget. With that said, I'll make a motion to accept the human resource budget as presented.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I hope you enjoyed the detail in the HR budget.
Thank you.
You'll need a bookmark.
I was wondering why it was so long. Now I see there's a lot of detail in it.
Next up is development services. This budget reflects a mid-year hire for an assistant planner. As I mentioned in the presentation, that there is a request from planning board the planning board chair who works very closely with the planning department, as well as the director of development services, that in order to get to being less of a reactive only department and to allow the town planner to really focus on what they should be focusing on is the strategy and future of this town, as well as the implementation of the comp plan. Having somebody who can really do the grunt work of the planning board, we feel this position is important. We also are working for the third year to implement a part-time code enforcement officer, and we have also put in the budget a part-time administrative assistant. The purpose, as you can read in the detail, the part-time administrative assistant would cover all the minute taking of the land use boards and commissions, because right now one of our technical employees is using their time to be a minute taker, and so that is not the best use of their time. We also have the opportunity, should it come to fruition, of when other administrative assistants are out on leave, that this position could be a floater so that all departments are staffed with at least someone to answer the phone and greet people, should that come up.
And I'll bring up the situation that we have been just talking about, that these are all new positions. Positions that are new in this budget have been approved by the town council. These have not been approved by the town council. I think we should leave this budget aside or remove these new positions.
Just a question. Way back under tab 8, we've got a memo that seems to contemplate long-range planning, particularly as to capital. Is development services where that would occur?
Yes.
And am I correct or incorrect? There's nothing in here, or maybe there wouldn't be, but there's nothing in here that kind of looks at the development of a long-range plan.
There is, but it's not where you think it would be. It is under the town planner. The town planner is the implementer and the developer, along with staff and the planning board, of the comp plan. As the town planner is tackling all planning requests and working with the planning board and going to the planning board meetings and all else that encompasses, that position is not able to also focus on the long-term strategic planning for the town. It is very difficult to do all of that with one position.
But that's how the charter's set up right now.
Correct.
Okay. So that's already designed in the organization. I don't disagree,
Yeah.
but it's already designed.
Yep.
But it's not accurate.
Above our pay scale, though.
Other questions? Forgive me, I missed the presentation. I looked through, but, so the Director of Development Services is already a full-time position. The Assistant Planner position is not in the FY18 budget, but it's in FY19, but it existed before.
Yes.
Did you cover that? I don't.
So last year, when there was personnel changes, we had a retiring planner and assistant planner. When we hired for the assistant planner, what we did is, in order to hire a really good employee who has been contributing a lot to the department and is very knowledgeable and technical, we career laddered down the assistant planner position to create the planning associate position so that that person could eventually career ladder up to the assistant planner, thereby eliminating the assistant planner position because it wasn't funded. We were funding the career ladder down. Now we are adding a new position because we are keeping the planning associate, we are keeping the town planner, and we are adding in that middle range planning position for the department.
And I'm sorry, what's the timing for adding the assistant planner?
Mid-year, so that'd be a January 1 hire.
Is that Ben?
Ben is the planning associate.
So essentially, you're requesting 3 new positions here, is that correct?
2 on an FTE count, 3 on a body count.
Why does the assistant planner number not show 100% increase?
Just because it's over 0, and that's indivisible.
Yeah, it's certainly not infinity sign or something. I guess it's undefined. Yeah, I don't think we can just approve it and hand it forward. I think we have to make some sort of recommendations with regard to all of these positions, whether it's.
Well, it seems here, and forgive me, but we take a, I don't want to talk about people, but one year we look at a person, we take a step down. Next year we say, okay, we like that person, but let's take a step up again and add another position. No, I'm going to wait for a new town manager at this juncture and let the new town manager show us how we want to move forward with this organization.
Yeah, I think that's.
If I could make a comment. Let me just ask a hypothetical question here. If right now, the 2% number that you've been using, if that were the number that were in here, for revenues, for property tax increase or real estate increase, would you have the same objections to these positions?
Yes, because of the way the management is moving forward. We're going to have a vacancy. New manager is going to be coming in. I want that philosophy bringing me forward, not a philosophy from someone who, with no disrespect, is leaving. I've sat on this board. I've been through multiple managers, and I have had problems moving one manager's philosophy forward for another one to manage it through.
And if I might, I could understand if this were a position that were either directly reporting to the, to the manager. This is an organization that has a structure, and again, looking at what this looks like as an org chart, this is basically, I believe, what we're looking at as the needs for that department to be able to operate.
You had the position. They played with it last year and reduced it.
Can we?
Let me just finish. So what you have is the recommendation from that department, how they want to operate. Now, I'm sure there's some conversation with the manager about that, but I know, just having, been involved for a short time, I think that the current manager is very involved in making sure his staff is making the kind of decisions they need to make for their department to operate. So, again, I understand the concern about adding new staff, but I don't believe that this is the type scenario where, there should be such a drastic change with a new manager coming in when you've already got a management structure here of how this department should run.
You don't have a management structure.
Can I interject? I'm sorry. We're about at our time. I think we have consensus on this particular.
Yeah.
There has been a little back and forth in the philosophy, as talked about between the last couple of years, so I think that's something that raises some concerns. And clearly, I think the town manager will have quite a bit of input into the individual departments, even if it's not a silo, I guess, is what I'm saying. But having said that, I think we should maybe set this one aside. I think we have some fairly easy ones to get through if we can maybe try to go a few more minutes. Or I should say, I don't know how easy those are.
I was going to say.
Some small.
Well, next is Board of Finance, and all this does is reflect the cost to video.
Motion to approve.
And take minutes.
Move to approve the finance board as recommended.
Is there a second? Discussion? All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Conservation Commission. What this does is, while there's no changes, I'd just like to remind that the right-of-way maintenance is reflective of surveying and grounds maintenance, so clearing if that comes up.
Is this just pretty much ongoing work, or is it something that has kind of a, I know it's something that, I see it in 17. Is it going to be that amount every year going forward?
I think what you're going to see over the next 18 months is, well, 15 months now, is a plan coming forward to council. What right-of-ways are the priorities? What's the estimated cost for work? And those costs will be approved by council so that there's a very clear plan of what's being done so that it is managed.
Because I think there had been some lapsing of maintenance, so
Right.
where it would cost a little more initially and then maybe come down.
That's right.
Anyone else have questions on that one?
I'll make a motion to approve the Conservation Board budget as presented.
Second?
Discussion? All's in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Municipal Land Trust.
I'll make a motion to accept the Municipal Land Trust budget as presented.
Discussion? All's in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Recreation.
This budget, as I stated, is combined now. It was separated out, rec and then beach, and it is now recreation and leisure. As I showed in the presentation, the difference between the two budgets and now the one budget is a decrease of roughly $55,000. What this does do, as you can see in several lines, is it transfers into the rec budget money that was in the beach budget, so that's where you're getting in the seasonal wages increase and the rec director increase because now it's not an allocation and the like. And You'll also notice that at the very bottom, the entertainment and special events has been moved to the restricted account. That's the Tunes on the Dunes Mondays and Wednesdays. And that account, well, we'll talk about that account when we get there. And again, for the third year, we are recommending the part-time program coordinator to expand the recreational opportunities for the community, which we have verified does not conflict in any way with the YMCA and their programming.
I'll make a motion after that explanation, which thoroughly explains what the manager stated to us 2 nights ago, to accept this budget of recreation as presented.
Second.
Discussion? I would just say that I believe you brought up the program coordinator last year, maybe the year before. I don't honestly remember if we passed it forward or not.
I believe the first year I want to say the first year you did, the second year you didn't, and in both years the council did
Council
not.
did not.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may, last year the concern was whether or not that was interfering or competing with the YMCA. And the rec director works very closely with the YMCA, and the programming that he envisions and other towns, South Kingstown is the example of quality recreational programming. The types of programming that we're looking to do is not being offered by the YMCA, and we were able to show that to the town council last year.
I think the idea, right, is that the program coordinator would
Pay for itself, correct.
generating signups.
Last year, the last 2 years, now that you're bringing that memory back, the last 2 years, we had said that if the first year would be putting the program coordinator into the budget, every subsequent year there would be a rec program fund, because that would be a revenue generating enterprise, and that position would be in the fund, so that at the bare minimum, revenues should cover the cost of the person. So after year one, it becomes a self-funding position, if not and hopefully a revenue generator for the town.
Would the code enforcement officer kind of fall along those same lines? Or is that not really, I understand that
Yeah.
that's really the goal, but
Right.
probably,
One is the sole purpose is to raise revenue. The other one, you would hope that they wouldn't have to raise revenue.
okay. Does anyone else, well, we're in discussion, right? Nothing?
Well, my question on that is, should we formalize that combination by approving the town beach operations budget where it removes it because it added it into the other budget?
I'm not sure. The town beach is run by the rec department, right?
Correct.
But this, if I understand it, this is the first year you're combining those budgets together.
Correct.
So by accepting on page 168, the town beach operations of 0, this board is also now recognizing formally that those two are combined, if we approve this one as presented as well.
Essentially, yeah.
So I will make a motion, even though it's a $0 value, to accept the town beach operations on page 168 as presented, knowing that it combines it with the recreation budget on page 167.
So essentially, we're approving both at the same time.
That's good.
Any objection to whoever seconded? All right, regardless, discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I think we're done, Jay.
Yeah, I think we should go to the OPEB and
That's not easy?
next, just because I'd like to maybe take a little more careful look at.
And Mr. Chair, I said it at the presentation because I know it's a subject that you're interested to. on the presentation online, but I'll email them out to the board anyways. I linked the actuarial reports directly to the presentation. So if you're looking at the presentation, you just click on it, it goes right to the page on the website with the reports.
So is there a recent, I think you said there had been a revised revision?
Yep, and because we get that so that we know what to put in the budget for for next year.
I just do have one question. Back on page 98, where it's pension and OPEB.
Yeah, I gotta move that.
Oh, okay, that's all.
Yeah, this cover page should be back there, that's all it is.
Oh, no, because
Yeah,
there's
same
an
thing.
explanation page to that, too. So-
Yep, same thing.
Okay, that's what I was asking. I didn't know there's a second one.
Where's the other page you were just?
98.
Right, 98, but what's the other?
177 is where the pension OPEB.
Yeah, that's the last item under general government, and then I'm not
Yeah,
sure what.
they mirror each other, so I would say just, you don't. You can X that off.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for clarifying that.
That's easy.
Yeah.
I like easy.
Okay, motion to adjourn then, I guess.
So moved.
For a second? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you
Tuesday.
Tuesday.